was crucified by the Romans. And that question was directed to me. And the following day I was I'm reading through the Bible in a year, and I came across one of the passages that makes reference to the fact that for Jesus to have been crucified, the Jews did not practice crucifixion, only the Romans. So that is why the Jews had to send him back to Rome for him to be tried and crucified there. And it all ties back in to if the Jews had arrested him and killed him however way they wanted to, then history would have changed, because it was already prophesied that Jesus Christ would have been crucified, he would have been hung on the tree, and no bones were broken. So if all of that dynamics were to be changed because he was not sent over to Rome, then the Bible in itself, as we have it, would have been misinterpreted, or it would be misleading, because the prophecies would not be fulfilled.
Good. Thank you very much, Brother Ensworth. Who else can recall what we discussed last week? Who else?
Let me say something before I can't speak anymore.
We discussed the tensions and the intricacies that were highlighting the period during which he was crucified. And so you were attributing those tensions leading to the judgment method and all the things that came on into idolatry to be the background of his crucifixion. So your argument was that it is possible the Jews could have killed him because they stoned Stephen and they didn't need permission. But this time they were needing permission, which was a farce. However, I would just comment here that it would depend on the perspective of how they wanted. But Brother Ainsworth touched the prophecy thing. So whatever thing whoever desired, but the prophecy was going to be fulfilled, that was going to be fulfilled by all means. So yes, we discussed those intricacies. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much to you all for your wonderful contributions. So today we saw the flyer for tonight's discussion, and we are going to talk about this question: did Christ have a fair trial? The trial, the proceedings that Christ went through, did he actually have a fair trial? Yes or no? If you say yes, you tell me why you think he had a fair trial. If you say no, you tell me why. Who can share something that you would want us to know?
No, he didn't.
No.
He didn't. In the judicial system that was in the time of his judgment, it required a representative. We could also see Paul speaking about that when he was locked up in prison in Rome and he didn't get it. So Jesus Christ did not get a lawyer, and they were expecting him to defend himself. That was a first mistake. The second mistake was that he went from mob action into judgment status and didn't give it the 48 hours required by the law of the nation to prepare for a case. So he didn't get a fair trial. And every time they pushed accusations onto him, not because they thought he would defend himself, but because they thought he should free himself from the cross. So, and which is not where the judges work. So I think he didn't get a fair trial. He didn't.
Okay. Thank you very much. So
yeah, I wanted to also say, from the perspective of the person who was judging him, he himself was very clear that he didn't think the man was guilty. So that implied that he knew there was an injustice somewhere. That's why he kept coming back to them and asking the question, is it this man you really want? And then he had to wash his hand. If it was a fair trial, he wouldn't be washing his hands off it. That is the way to indicate that something was not right.
Okay. Thank you very much. So today we are going to be talking about the trial of Jesus, and this is going to be from the time he's arrested in the Garden of Gethsemane and then taken through the trial proceedings until he was crucified on the cross. So we are going to look at what happened during the night, how all these trials play out. We see in the Gospels the accounts recorded there, and piece together these pieces and then put them together to give us a perfect picture of the trial. So we are going to go through 5 different trials, or is it 4? I think 4 or 5 different trials. And I want us to really focus in on what we are about to walk through tonight. I've already asked the question, did Jesus have a fair trial? And the answer that we've all concluded that is no. So we are going to look at how they violated their own laws. And it enabled them to get a conviction before the crowds even really woke up the morning and participated in the festivities, because it was during the time of the Passover. Yeah, but you know how much these people hated Jesus. It's sad that these people were supposedly the leaders of the people of Israel. And it's just hard to remember that these were all prophesied and they were meant to happen in different ways. And why this is a major point in scripture. But you look at this trial and how Jesus Christ was taken through this trial. This is a trial that should have not even be allowed to run through in the ancient world, not even today, in the ancient world. But for Jesus, they made an exception. And I would say they made exception after exception after exceptions after exceptions to make sure that he was crucified. So we are going to begin from the first trial where he's taken to the high priest Annas. Brother Godwin, I've sent you, I don't know if Kwaps is here, but if you check on your phone, you see the scriptures I've sent to you just now.
I'm here.
So, Kwaps, you are here. Good. So, Brother Gordon, you can take a break. It's good Kwaps is here. So, Kwaps, yeah, I guess you've seen all what I've sent to you.
Yeah.
Yes. So, we start from the first trial, from the moment that he's arrested. We realize that the crowd and the Romans come for him, and the temple guards come and they arrest him. Judas kisses him and they take him away. So the first place they take him is to Annas' house. Who is Annas? Annas is a big deal. In fact, when Jesus is going through the trials, there is technically 2 high priests, but one of them is known as the public figure, as the higher priest. But there's another who is behind the scenes, who is actually the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who is the main high priest. Annas was appointed as high priest in AD 6 by Quirinius. So we know this from records, and he was going to be the high priest. He was the high priest until Pontius Pilate came in. And there was a man called Valerius Gratus who did not like Caiaphas. No, sorry, Annas. He didn't like Annas. So when Pontius Pilate was sent to Rome and to Judea, during that time, Annas, who was the high priest, was demoted, and his son-in-law, who was Caiaphas, became high priest. So I'm just giving you a background as to how Luke chapter 3, verse 2, it is recorded that we have 2 high priests. So, Kwabna, please read Luke chapter 3, verse 2 for me.
Annas and Caiaphas, being the high priest, the word of God came unto John, the son of Zacharias, in the wilderness.
Okay, so we see that there are 2 high priests being recorded in this scene. And I've just given you the background. Annas was the main high priest. When Pontius Pilate was sent to Judea, he was then demoted by a man called Valerius Gratus because he didn't like Caiaphas at all. This is politics, but the politics that was playing out at the time. And his own son-in-law, who was Caiaphas, then became high priest. So two of them are seen in this event. And like I said, this will be the first trial. So here we realize that Christ is taken to Annas, and Annas is questioning him about his teachings, his motive, all of his stuff, what he was doing, and requires that any criminal allegations that are brought. And okay, before I continue, when Christ is taken to Annas, we realize that he is questioning Christ. He questions Christ. Where is this? Quaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, so start from John chapter 18, verse 20.
Jesus replied and said, everyone
Start
knows.
from 19. Start from 19.
I don't have 19 here.
Oh, okay. Okay, you go to 20. Start from 20. But before then, Annas was interrogating Christ. So this was Christ's response from verse 19. And from verse 20, go ahead.
Jesus replied and said, everyone knows what I teach. I have preached regularly in the synagogues and the temple where the people gather. I have not spoken in secret.
Yes, hold on. So Annas was asking Christ for evidence. Yeah, but according to the law in Deuteronomy chapter 19, verse 15, a single witness, Deuteronomy 19, verse 15, a single witness shall not suffice against a person for any crime or for any wrong in connection with any offense that he has committed. Only on the evidence of two witnesses or three witnesses shall be charged or shall be established. This is in Deuteronomy 19:15. But here, Caiaphas himself is interrogating, trying to find answers, trying to make Christ say something. And Christ replied and said that everyone knows what I teach. You are disregarding the law. Have I not spoken openly? I have always taught in the synagogues and at the temples. Where are all the Jews? They should come together. I have said nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who heard me. Surely they know what I have said. So what is Jesus doing? He's calling Caiaphas and those around out. He's being like, hey, the law requires you bring forth the witnesses. I have always spoken in front of everybody. Why are you accusing me that I'm guilty of blasphemy or whatever it is that you're accusing me of? So they hear Jesus' request for witness. Then the high priest and his officials strike Jesus in the face. So proceed from verse 22. John 18:22.
Then one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across the face. Is that the way you answer to the high priest? He demanded. Jesus replied, if I have said anything wrong, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, why are you beating me? Then Annas bound Jesus and sent him to Caiaphas, the high priest.
Good. So here, one of the officials standing there then strikes Jesus in the face, violating the law again. And they say, is this the way you answer the high priest? And so Jesus isn't also intimidated by the use of the force. And instead, he challenges and says that, I want you to bring forth witnesses, testimony, eyewitnesses. And so after Christ is like, you people, I'm not going to just be there for you to intimidate me. Annas is like, okay, we are going to take you to my son-in-law, the high priest, and the Sanhedrin. So hereafter, they go out and they wake up all of the Sanhedrin. Don't forget it's midnight. They wake up all the Sanhedrin. And we know that Jesus Christ was on the cross by 9 a.m. So that should again tell you that all of these trials are being enwrapped. Now Caiaphas summons up all the Sanhedrin. Yeah, so Mark. Now go to Mark chapter 14, verse 55. Mark 14:55. Now Caiaphas summons all the Sanhedrin and the other elders of Israel, and in the process, they are getting witnesses. You remember when they were at Nas, Christ was calling for witnesses. Now, when they were going to Caiaphas' place, whilst Caiaphas is calling the Sanhedrin, in the same strain, they are pulling for witnesses. You know, they are rushing to get this done because they want this done very quickly before morning. And don't forget that they conspired with Judas in the night. And they are like, we need to do this and make sure that at the time we are arresting Jesus, Judas, you have to get him at the night so that we don't get people who come and then intervene with the arrest and all of that. Okay. And so they put together all false and they put together witnesses who all bear false witnesses, and that is the problem. So Mark 14:55, read for me.
Inside, the leading priests and the entire high council were trying to find evidence against Jesus so they could put him to death, but they couldn't find any. Many false witnesses spoke against him, but they contradicted each other.
Good. So there are all kinds of discrepancies. They couldn't find a valid evidence at this point. And it says that the chief priest, Caiaphas is looking around and he's like, hey, we have to get this done. And all these witnesses, like everybody is failing to bring something. And so finally, he throws out tantrums, like he's speaking out, and Caiaphas shouts to Jesus, are you not going to answer him are you not going to answer? Because once all of this was going on, Christ was what? He was silent. Perhaps read Isaiah 53, verse 7.
He was oppressed and treated harshly, yet he never said a
Relax
word.
and read this particular text for me. Isaiah 53, 7. Relax and read it.
I'm very relaxed, don't worry. He was oppressed
Good.
and treated harshly, yet he never said a word. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep is silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth.
Amen. He was quiet because Isaiah had already prophesied that while the trials and accusations and everything are going on, he will be. And all of this trial was in fulfillment of scripture. So you let me proceed. Whilst all of this is going on, Caiaphas is also furious. And then he is yelling, are you not going to answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you? The things that these people are saying that are lies, that are false. He's saying that Christ will say something. Now, Mark, go back to Mark chapter 50, verse 60.
51?
Mark 50, verse 61. 61.
But Jesus was silent and made no reply.
Okay, before you read 61, read 60. You have 60, right? Okay, so 60. Then the high priest stood up before the others and asked Jesus, well, aren't you going to answer these charges? What do you have to say for yourself? Now, Quabs, continue from 61.
But Jesus was silent and made no reply. Jesus said, I am, and you will see the Son of Man seated in the place of power at God's right hand and coming on the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his clothing to show his horror and said,
Now,
why do we need other witnesses? You all have heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict? Guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die. Then some of them...
Hold on. Christ at this point shows his own faith. And he starts by saying, I am. Brother James, those who have been joining Stratford Wednesday Bible class, types and shadows, when we got to Exodus, I am. He took his time to actually give us the scriptural meaning, interpretation, the wordings, and the exegesis to I am, the phrase I am. When you hear I am, the name of God, divinity, that is the name of God. And Christ is saying in front of the Sanhedrin and Caiaphas and everybody that I am. And he does not end there. He says, you will see me sitting at the right hand of the mighty one, and I'll be coming on the clouds of heaven. Then in verse 62 of Mark 14, Caiaphas says, praise the Lord. He tears his clothes and says, he has spoken blasphemy. And he's spoken blasphemy. Why do we even need any more witnesses? So they haven't, at this point, they still haven't been able to find any credible witness, any credible charge against him. But now Christ just gives them what they would use to get him, to crucify him. He just said that he is coming in glory in a cloud. He opened his own mouth and condemned himself. Essentially, he says, look, you've heard a blasphemy. What do you think? And so now the whole Sanhedrin around him saying he is worth of death. And then the men who were guarding Jesus and all those who were around began mocking him and beating him. So I want us to be taking note of certain things. He was already assaulted at Anas's house. And here again, they are beating him and they are mocking him. So now I get to the point where religious leaders of Israel are beating Christ. The priests, the people who are at the top, they began mocking him. And so, perhaps continue reading for me.
Then some of them began to spit at him, and they blindfolded him and beat him with their fists. Prophesy to us, they jeered, and the guards slapped him as they took him away.
Okay. So read verse. Okay. Read verse 64.
You have all heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict? Guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die.
Guilty, they all cried. He deserves to die. Okay. So now, we are at a stage where we are seeing that Christ has given himself up. And Jesus finally opens his mouth. And then he gives them all the ammunitions that they need to put him on the cross by uttering a true statement, by the way. So, interestingly, at this point, the Sanhedrin could have stoned Christ to death. They could have been like, let's get rid of him, because it was permitted in the law. And you hear, the Jews were like, which we would also look at. They are like, oh, we cannot kill him. We need your approval. We need approval from Rome. But that is not true, because last week when we look at the historical background, which I've done a PowerPoint presentation on it, to be uploaded on our YouTube channel before Saturday. So just so you know, a proper PowerPoint video presentation on last week's class. So it will be uploaded. They stoned Stephen in Acts 7. And even Jesus himself, they sought to capture Jesus and stone him earlier. I think it's in Matthew 11. They sought Christ to capture him and stone him earlier, but they didn't stone him and to kill him. They at this point they weren't looking to stone him, but you know they wanted Christ to die, but the manner in which they wanted him to die, they wanted crucifixion. They wanted him to be put on display. They literally wanted to hang him on the cross, on the road where everybody would see him. They did not want a quiet execution carried out according to the Jewish custom. They wanted the Roman method of execution, crucifixion. And like I said last week, they wanted Christ to actually suffer and die. They wanted a public disgrace for him. And also, this was the Passover feast. So Jerusalem was filled with people from all over the range. They wanted people to see
to see the visible suffering of Christ. They wanted to send a message, not only about opposing Rome, but about opposing them as a high priest. In their minds, Jesus had challenged their authority, had exposed their hypocrisy, had threatened their influence, and his crucifixion would have served as a powerful deterrent to anyone who might follow him. So now that he has given himself up by giving them the ammunitions, they then said that, okay, it's good. Now let's take him to Rome. So, Krabs, go to Luke chapter 23, verse 4.
Pilate turned to the leading priests and to the crowd and said, I find nothing wrong with this man. Then they
Good.
became insistent.
Hold on. So when they brought Christ to Pilate, Pilate interrogates him, and 3 times Pilate tells them that I found this man is innocent. The blasphemy that you people are talking about, it's not me, it's not my business. You people should deal with him according to your own laws. Why are you people bringing this man to him? He is not guilty. Go ahead.
Then they became insistent. But he is causing riots by his teaching wherever he goes, all over Judea, from Galilee to Jerusalem. Oh, is he a Galilean? Pilate asks. When they said to him that he was, Pilate sent him to Herod and Antipas, because Galilee was under Herod's jurisdiction, and Herod happened to be in Jerusalem at that time. Herod was delighted at the opportunity to see Jesus, because he had heard about him and had been hoping for a long time to see him perform a miracle. He asked Jesus questions after questions, but Jesus refused to answer. Meanwhile, the leading priests and teachers of religious laws stood there shouting their accusations. Then Herod and his soldiers began mocking and ridiculing Jesus.
Okay, Quaps, hold on. So we realize that from verse 6 of Luke 23, it says that, oh, he's a Galilean, Pilate asked. And when they said that he was, Pilate sent him to Herod, because Pilate is like, me, I'm already a governor of Judea. You people are saying this man is a Galilean. Then this is not my territory. You people should take him to Herod, because I don't want to have anything to do with this man. Last week we went through Pilate's episode, and like I said, Pilate is not a good guy. Okay, let me not go into details. So Pilate interrogates him, and then he's like, take him to Herod. So when they took him to Herod, from there, this is trial number 3. We are moving to trial number 4, and we will come back to trial number 5, which is still Pilate. In trial number 4, they get to Herod, and then Herod has already heard so many great things about Christ. Don't forget that. And he has history with Christ, this same King Herod, because he's the one who killed the cousin of Christ, John the Baptist. He beheaded John the Baptist. So Christ already has a history with with Herod, and Herod has heard so many things that this man is a miracle working man. He does a lot of great wonders. So Herod is like, in verse 8, Herod was delighted at the opportunity to see Jesus, because he had heard about him and hoping a long time to see him perform a miracle. So he then asked Jesus, but he then asked Jesus question after question. I'm guessing he was having a discussion with Jesus, and then Jesus was still silent. Jesus was taking the fifth, what we call the Fifth Amendment, which was in their law. Before we close, we walk through all the laws they desecrated. He was quiet. And then Herod is like, this man, if you won't say anything. Okay. Meanwhile, the leading priests and the teachers stood there shouting accusations. Then Herod and his soldiers began mocking and ridiculing Jesus. Finally, they put a royal robe on him and sent him back to Pilate, all fulfilling Isaiah. Herod and Pilate, who had been enemies, became friends that day. So, okay, let me just give this brief. in David's story, we realize that a bear and a lion came together to attack David. In animal kingdom, a bear and a lion are rivals, like enemies. In 1 Samuel, they are enemies, but they came together that day to attack David. Now, a type in the Old Testament, we are seeing it pan out in the trial of Christ. That when Christ was at the center point of this incident, Pilate and Herod, who were enemies, then also came together. So they take Christ back to Pilate. So, Quaps, go to John chapter 18, verses 33. Yes, go to John chapter 18, verse 33.
Verse
Do you have it?
33. Yeah, then Pilate went back into his headquarters and called for Jesus to be brought to him. "Are you the king of the Jews?" he asked him. Jesus replied, "Is this your own question, or did others tell you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate retorted. "Your own people and their leading priests brought you to me for trial. Why? What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not an earthly kingdom. If it were, my followers would fight to keep me from being handed over to the Jewish leaders. But my
Okay,
kingdom..."
hold on. So Pilate entered his headquarters again and called on Jesus and said to him, "Are you this man? Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said, "Do you say this of your own accord, or did others say this to you about me?" In other words, Jesus was like, did you piece this together? Or are my accusers out there putting this in your brain? And Pilate is like, what am I? Me, am I a Jew? Your own nation, your own people, and the chief priest delivered you over to me. What have you done? Talk to me, tell me. And then Jesus gives him this beautiful answer. He says that my kingdom, in other words, Christ was telling him, yes, I am a king, but it is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would have been fighting that I might not be delivered unto the Jews. Now, all of a sudden, Pilate is like, wait a minute, you are a king, but you are a king of a different thing. And you are talking about fighting against the Jews. And Jesus said, you say that I am a king. And Jesus goes ahead and says, for this purpose, I was born, and for this purpose, I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who hears the truth listens to my voice. Hey, okay. And we know how this story pans out. Pilate said to him, what is truth? Pilate missed it because he didn't know he was just standing right in front of the way, the truth, and the life. And then we know what happened. So Pilate just had to give up Christ for him to be executed. And sorry to those who missed that last week class. You might not have the details, but by Saturday, when you go to our YouTube channel, you get clarity on last week's class. So I'm going to take us through the laws that they defiled, they broke. Their own laws that they broke is 12 that they broke in reference to this trial. So number 1, it was illegal for the chief priest to bribe an accomplice in order to secure an arrest. And what's the time? Okay, 15 minutes. So I'll ask this question. It was illegal for the chief priest to bribe an accomplice in order to secure an arrest. How are they guilty with this particular law? Who can tell me?
Bribing Judas to betray Christ.
Exactly. They bribed Judas to betray Christ, 30 pieces of silver. And they are like, find us a time where we can get him, like when it is in the dark. All this was absolutely wrong, like totally illegal. And so law number 2 that they broke. Secondly, it was illegal for the Sanhedrin to convene after nightfall and before the morning sacrifice. And we realize that the trial of Christ was actually planned throughout the whole night, even until morning. So point number 2, a law that they themselves broke, because it was in the darkness. Before 9 a.m., Christ was on the cross. Totally illegal. Law number 3, it was illegal for the Sanhedrin to originate charges against an accused person, because when the Sanhedrin gathers, it is someone else who is not a member of the Sanhedrin who brings a charge against you in front of the Sanhedrin or courts. But here in the trial of Christ, from trial 1 with Christ and Annas, who was the previous high priest, he was trying to find a charge, like, let me interrogate you. And then from there, it moves to Caiaphas. Then Caiaphas, they are trying to bring all these false witnesses, and everybody claims are all over the place. But they are like, we are still going to convict you.
So point number 4, Jewish law required that no judgment be issued on the eve of Sabbath, nor on any festival. So they weren't allowed to hold a criminal court during the eve of Sabbath, which is exactly what they did. And even that is why even Joseph of Arimathea was able to go and get Jesus from the cross, because they had violated the Sabbath law by actually executing someone on the eve of Sabbath. And not only that, they also did this during a festival time, the festival of Passover. So the Jewish law requiring that no judgments be issued on the eve of Sabbath or nor on any festival, they had broken that law. Now, law number 5, the Sanhedrin could not issue a death sentence on the same day as a guilty verdict. And they are like, no, we have to rush. We have to crucify him this night by tomorrow morning. Now, law number 6, it was illegal to convict a man solely on the basis of his own comments, which is where we get like the 5th Amendment. I don't know if in the UK we have 5th Amendment, but this 5th Amendment, I know it's in the US laws, where if you are not required to incriminate yourself. You can decide that you won't say anything. But in the matter of Jesus, they used what he himself said to incriminate he himself. Number 7, it was illegal for a man to be convicted without matching testimony from at least 2 witnesses or 3. This is in the Bible, Deuteronomy. And most of these laws are also in Deuteronomy as well. So when he was in front of the Sanhedrin, how did they find him guilty? He says he's the son of man, I am, blah, blah, blah. And they say, oh, blasphemy. And point number 8, it was law number 8, which they disregarded. It was illegal to convict a man without first conducting a recorded and a balloted vote of elders. So when a case is held, the elders of Israel should first come and be part of the process. And after that, they would vote before someone is convicted. But in this case, the Sanhedrin just decided that he is guilty, and they decided to follow through whatever that they did. Number 9, it was illegal for the Sanhedrin to issue a guilty verdict outside of the temple complex. And we know why they couldn't go and have this at the temple complex, because the crowds would have known that something is up, that something is going on. Jerusalem was full of people, and Christ had a lot of loved ones. So they decided to do it in secret in the courts of Pilate. And Pilate bringing him out to his people in Judea. They were like, between Jesus and Christ, Barabbas crucified. Number 10, it was illegal for enemies or adversaries of an accused person to sit in judgment of the person. So, like these Jews, these elders of these Jews, everywhere they go, we know that in scripture they were all always with Christ. Like they are essentially going everywhere with him. In the accounts of Matthew 23, going everywhere with him from their arrest. They are there, they are conducting the proceedings themselves. Meanwhile, they are clearly the adversaries of Christ, and they are the ones who sat in this judgment. The Bible and the Jewish law at the time required that if you were being judged, your enemies had to recuse themselves. But we find a total disregard for this as well. Then point number 11, law number 11, which they broke. It was illegal for the high priest to interrogate a criminal suspect in private. And we realized that in the first trial, it was just Christ and Annas in private. He was interrogating Christ, trying to get something from Christ to use it against him. And finally, the final law number 12, which they disregarded for, which they had disregard for, but they still went through the execution anyway, is investigators were required to thoroughly investigate proceedings before executing anyone. So in Deuteronomy chapter 13, verse 14, this is also there. So at this point, I would want to say thank you all for your time. And also, I would once again do a PowerPoint recording, video recording of this lesson and upload on our YouTube channel, where you then tend to see these laws and their references in greater details. Okay. So thank you all for your time. Any question, any comments, any suggestions, you are allowed to take them.